Welcome to the folks joining in. I don't know if you caught that. I started off with a cough. That's not a lesson on how to start a webinar. It's just frog got in my throat. Mike Michalowicz here, and to my side, I don't know where she is on your screen. That's AJ Harper, my writing partner. AJ, I found that's the way to do it, by the way, is just to point both directions. I see participants are coming in. So while people are arriving, let's start off with the administrative stuff of importance. Our goal is we're targeting about 45 minutes of rich content. This is the reboot of Clockwork. This was the original book, and here is the new book. So what constitutes a reboot? How do you go about it? What I'm hoping you take away from this is ways to improve your business. Maybe you're rebooting a product, maybe you're rebooting your brand, and or if you're an author, this is going to give you, you're going to get some direct insights on how to improve your business. Now, I got to make sure the chat is activated because in the past, this hasn't worked for me. So I'm asking a big favor. If you can hear me and it's loud and clear there, Melanie McTaggart's right now. She's like, it's working. Good. Everyone else, good. Want to make sure you're here and you can hear me. I can see the chat's pouring in. If you have any questions as we move along, please post them in the chat. You can also use the Q&A. I'll queue those up, and toward the end of our presentation, because we have a lot of content to cover, we will answer the questions then, but ask them as it gets triggered. Last things, I invite you to turn off the distractions. I know there's countless webinars, there's millions that are going on right now in this moment. And it's my nature when I join a webinar is, oh, I'll also get some work done. And my work degrades and I don't listen, so it's a double loss. I invite you to turn that stuff off just for 45 minutes, and AJ and I will provide you with rich, applicable content. This is free. We're doing this for free because we think it's of great value to you, and we might make it accessible. And we do two things we want to introduce you to. We'll introduce that to you as we go along. So it's an opportunity to share some stuff. All right, AJ, I think I covered all the perfunctory stuff. Is that true?
I think you did. Yeah. You might want to say we're, in case people don't know. I mean, maybe you think we're just like a famous duo by now. But...
That's a good point. So let me introduce that. Thank you. So in case you don't know who I am or who AJ is, let me explain. I am the author of those books I've strategically positioned behind me for marketing purposes. And AJ on the screen here is my writing partner. She's been my writing and an extraordinary friend, a best friend. She's been my writing partner from the first book, which was The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, till the most recent, which is Clockwork Revised and Expanded. And for a new book we're working on that coming out in 2021. She is 2024. She's an extraordinary writer, an extraordinary editor, and she really is relentless on ensuring that my books include all of the knowledge in an accessible format. So she is a stickler for that. So that's who AJ is. And so AJ is more than integral to the writing of the book. She is the book along with me. I think that's a proper introduction. Do you, AJ, want to kind of lead us on how the reboot came about, or should I do that? Or what's your thoughts? I want you to take the lead.
You want to, just get started about why you came to me and said, hey, let's reboot Clockwork. Why don't you explain why you wanted to do it?
Yeah. So, and I think there's some insights here for everyone to jot down, is you really need to listen to your audience. So if you have a physical product or a service product or a book, which is a product, listen to your audience. And what I suggest is whatever's working, you amplify. What's not working, you have to resolve. To me, it's kind of like a song, like, I don't know, whatever hit there is that some band makes, and then they do a remaster of it. They redo the song so it sounds better. That's a little bit like this book process. So in short, I got feedback from readers that email me directly. That's another important thing, stay engaged directly with your consumers, your readers in this case, so you understand what's going on. And what I was listening for was not their compliments or concerns. I was looking more for their questions, saying, I don't understand this, or I'm trying this, but I'm getting stuck. And those, at least for me, was a great indicator of the book isn't simple enough. There was another component behind the book. I create partnerships for it's a licensee effectively to teach the methodologies that I've created for the books. And behind Clockwork, behind this book, is Adrian Dorison's company, which is called Run Like Clockwork. They had their 1,000th student go through the Clockwork training. These are people who read the book and want to make sure they're doing it right. And Adrian and her team have come back and said, here's the spot where people get stuck. They read this in the book and they're trying to deploy it, and they call us to help fix this in the book so we can expand on it. And that's how it came about. Quick call with my editor, Noah, at Penguin Books. I said, we got a book we got to rewrite. And one final part, he goes, fine. He goes, can you guess the manuscript in about 2 months from once the contract's signed? And I said, but we're doing a rewrite. Like, it's revised and expanded. He's like, yeah, it's just what, you polish the front, you polish the back. I'm like, no, like this book, Clockwork, has 60% brand new content. It's, I say the tagline is 60% new, 100% simplified. We reorganized the entire book so the flow is faster. Took a year of AJ and I working and going to cabins and crying, well, at least me crying, and creating this book. So that's how it came about.
I think it's important also to note that this is a second reboot. The first reboot was Profit First, but for a different reason. Profit First was initially Penguin Random House declined the book after Pumpkin Plan, one of their biggest mistakes they ever made, which they probably wouldn't admit, but they did come back and say eventually, hey, maybe we made a mistake. They didn't say it like that, but hey, we'd like an opportunity. Once it was self-published, they asked if they could buy the rights to it. So there's a difference between a reboot that happens because you need to improve the book, and a reboot that happens because a publisher picks up your book and then wants to make it slightly different.
Yeah. And I was looking off screen occasionally. When people post, please post your questions in the chat. That's me looking at the chat, pulling your questions off so I can store them, or you can use the Q&A system. The lesson here is when it comes to a reboot isn't necessarily a tear down, kind of like a building where they demolish the building, they put a new structure up. The essence stays the same. It was, how do we teach the reader? How do I teach my readers to design their business to run themselves? So the essence just didn't change. The question was, how do we get to that result faster, easier, and with a bigger impact? And so I think the starting point, AJ, is really you and I sat down and you drilled me with questions like, what's not working? Why are people getting stuck here? And then how do you fix it? And why would that work? And we went through every single element to do the redo.
I think it's good to stop for a moment and just talk about why would a person want to do a reboot. So again, if you're published, if you get picked up, so let's say you self-published, Profit First was initially self-published, did amazingly well, and they picked it up. So your publisher doesn't want the exact version.
Right.
They want it to be slightly different. And, but again, even with Profit First, that's not just a spit and polish with like an author's note added to it or something. That was, you also simplified Profit First, and not to the extent of Clockwork, but it's also a huge opportunity. So for those of you considering this, I hope that you won't just add a little bit of content. Here's a bonus chapter, or, we've updated whatever. I hope you'll get in touch with the folks that you wrote about in the book and get updates and include success stories. It's a huge opportunity to provide what's really, really needed in a prescriptive nonfiction book, which is social proof that it actually works. So, to me, it's not supposed to be quick and dirty.
Right. This, I don't know if it's the source is Les Brown, but I know it's attributed to him often saying, never make a point without a story, and never give a story without making a point.
It's probably less.
It's a great observation. And what we did in the reboot of Clockwork was call all those people, reach out to them. I did, that were in the book, and saying, what's the continuance of your story? Did it continue to prosper? Did it collapse? What happened? So you have an opportunity to expand stories. Think about like a TV show, whatever your favorite series is, and it ends, that season ends. We salivate waiting for the next season. Well, we actually have this opportunity in our books. When we do a revised and expanded, people that already enjoy your book, they're hooked to that TV show. They don't want to see the TV show again with just the same everything, maybe with a different actor, like one new actor there. They want to see the continuance. So building those stories. I think the second thing, AJ, that we did, which was really smart, was we reached out to Adrian, and I'll explain my relationship with Adrian a little more in a bit, because I think we can all use this here. I reached out to her and said, tell me about the people going through the Clockwork service division, Run Like Clockwork, and we want to get stories. We collected, I would say, cumulatively 100 new stories at a very surface level. We didn't interview 100 people, but we got 100 story potential, saying, okay, here's different things that complement what we're doing. Here's people who've gone through Clockwork. It's 5 years later after the first version, so we have some history. Then we whittled it down to maybe 25 or so interviews that spoke to it. And then we included maybe 20 new stories specifically, and then enhanced all the other existing stories that were there.
I think getting that social proof in the form of stories and case studies is actually reason enough to do a reboot. I mean, I think people don't realize that that could actually be the reason that you decide to refresh the book, is if you all of a sudden have a lot of people who have had success and results that now enhances, because sometimes we release a book before we have all that proof. And sometimes we have social proof because the book exists.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have people who can talk about how they read your book and they applied what they learned, and now their life for work is business is different. That's actually reason enough. But another reason to do a reboot is if your content is outdated. That's really important. If you want, for Clockwork, the reason we did Clockwork, new insights, improvements, and streamlining the process. That was mostly the reason, was let's make this simpler. But I think here's another reason to reboot that people might not be aware of, which is if you have and now have an infrastructure in place to support readers. So Profit First, the self-published book, did not have, the Profit First Professionals did not exist.
Right.
It came out after the book as a
Mm-hmm.
result of the book. But with the reboot, we're able to plant seeds about Profit First Professionals in the revised and expanded edition of Profit First. So if when you first launched your book, you had no idea how you were going to monetize it, you didn't have a licensee or a certification program or classes or whatever you're doing, but now you do, I think that's actually a good reason to reboot it, frankly, because it's now that's new information. And from that, you naturally will have probably a streamlined process, maybe worksheets and cool other to-do things, and then for sure anecdotes and stories.
I remember a email that came from a reader. I don't remember specifically who it was, but it started off with, very kind words. I love Clockwork. This is the first version. It's changing my life. But, and pay attention to the buts. It's great, but it's the but that matters the most. And honestly, for my ego, it's tough to say, but it shouldn't be perfect out of the get-go. I now know nothing's perfect out of the gate. You put your best effort into it. You deliver everything you've got to make it the best you can, but you will discover more. And so it's great. But he said, I don't want to share this with my employees. I don't know what it was, maybe a dozen employees at this company, because what he said was that if I tell my employees I'm going to take a 4-week vacation, if I tell my employees I'm designing my business to run without me, their response is going to be like, oh, you're going to make money off of our sweat, that you're going to leverage us, that we're going to be your workhorses. Shame on you. Mm-hmm. And he says, I love this book, but I can't share it with my employees. And I was like, oh my God, that's the exact opposite intention. What I look for when I get feedback from readers is, first, I look for common threads. What do people say regularly? There's a concept called the QBR, the queen bee role, that people were getting stymied on consistently. There was confusion over time analysis and so forth. Mm-hmm. Those are the common threads. Sometimes I call it touching the stove. Sometimes you burn your hands so severely in just one shot, like you'll never forget, don't touch a hot stove. Well, this one email of mine, I'm afraid to give to my employees, was a shocker. And AJ and I sat down, said, this is absolutely for employees. How do we engage employees? And that's where the new version of Clockwork has an employee section, literally in every chapter, exclusive for the employees, and engages directly with them to mollify that concern.
Yeah, we actually added, we can get into this a little later of the changes, but we actually added a whole section for employees at the end of each chapter specifically for that purpose.
Some nice comments are coming in. Thank you for the kind words. People are using Clockwork. People are looking to emulate this. That's the intention of this webinar, is we just want to give you the insights for the reboot and how you can emulate it. We want to dig into the writing process too. Anything else you want to talk about the reboot? I'm just looking through my notes here. I want to talk about the Run Like Clockwork story and how that got structured.
Yeah, I want to, yeah, that's what I was hoping, is to talk about how Run Like Clockwork actually inspired this reboot.
Okay, so we'll do that, and then we're going to dig into collectively. AJ, you're going to lead this, the writing and editing process, which is so important. So, Run Like Clockwork is, and if anyone in here is an author or aspiring author in the nonfiction space, please mark this down as a really powerful strategy. And what it is I've created licensees, licensing opportunities for every book I write. So when Fix This Next came out, I said there's gonna be a portion of readers who want to take it further. I need a licensee. It's true for Profit First. It's true for Clockwork. I attribute to Don Miller. I don't know who the source is, but I remember seeing Don Miller say this on stage. He goes, a certain portion of your readers, 5 or 10%, want to make sure they're doing it right. Make sure they're doing it right. I don't ever want to dissuade you from including everything in your book. In fact, I implore everything you know should go in the book. But the feedback I get is, if I put everything in there, no one will need me. Most people shouldn't need you because the book is that good and they can DIY it. They're going to DIY it anyway. Let's go elsewhere. But a small portion says, this is so important. This has so much content that's relevant to me. This is the definitive source that I'm going to go to learn how to go further, to make sure I'm doing it right. That's why these licensees. Adrienne Dorison owns Run Like Clockwork, which coincidentally is running like clockwork. She no longer is the forefront of the company. She's no longer actively doing the teaching. She's assembled a crew of, I think it's 10 or 15 people. Emily Doyle is now leading it. She's extraordinary. And I have a regular dialogue with her team and a couple of our other team members here to organize some of our marketing efforts. And the feedback was coming in of how prepared people were coming in first. And the feedback was, not everyone's fully prepared. They've read the stuff, but it wasn't a question if I'm doing it right. They said, do I even understand this right? And so that was the first thing we're looking for, is where is there a comprehension issue? And any clients that are coming on that weren't properly educated, the book needed to improve to address them. I think there was a commercial used to say, our best customer is an educated customer. The best customer for your service division, if you build that behind a book, is someone that explicitly knows what to expect because the book taught it. The second thing was, where do they need to fill the gaps? So one of the concepts in the book is called the 3 T's. The concept of, is there something you can just trash and don't need to do? Is there something you can transfer to someone else to manage instead of you, maybe the leader of the company, doing it? And is there something you can trim, work you're doing, but you can compress it? But what Adrienne and the team, Emily and the team, found out was, there's certain things that people treasure. There's certain things that people love to do. I love writing books along with AJ. Like, we love this, so we still do it. Could it be outsourced? Yeah, but it perhaps would degrade the quality, but no matter what, it would degrade what I enjoy doing. Could I stop doing keynotes? I love doing that. It's the 2 things I like to do. I like to write books and be the spokesperson for these concepts. So what are the things you treasure? That's one idea that came back. So Run Like Clockwork first told us how people were coming in confused. We had to resolve that. Secondly, telling us where they were filling in gaps that weren't understood, like that treasure component. And thirdly was, where did people need the most coaching? And those tell you where to deep dive into something. So for example, the QBR, which is the pinnacle concept of this entire book. Like, you need to know the heartbeat of your business. There can only be one most important thing. And people are coming in saying, oh, the one most important thing for my business is these 5 things. So there was this confusion. Even though I thought it was explicitly clear, you have one thing, people are coming with many things and say, all these things are equally important. Everything is the most important in my business. And we had to dive in deeper. Deeper didn't mean bring complexity to it. Coincidentally, it meant the opposite. It meant actually simplifying it more and more and more so we can hit that drum. What we're fighting here, we figured out, was natural tendency. It's human tendency to bring complexity to the simple. And so don't take something and make it more complex in order to make it perceived as simple, because it never works. bring it down, boil it down until it's even more simple. All that stuff came from Run Like Clockwork. And I can see some people, Kristen just posted some people in here have used Run Like Clockwork. It's a great expansion for those people. And one last thing I want to share is there's books out there on exercise. For example, you know, what are the things I should do at the gym? There's great books on it. And so you have the recipe, but sometimes it's nice to have the chef with you there so you can be the sous chef. Sometimes it's nice, instead of doing the exercises that you see in the book, is going and getting a trainer for a period of time to make sure you're doing it right. A portion of your audience will do that. Now, what I want to do is dig into, I think, what's the core of our conversation, was going to be the writing and editing of your book. I also want to share that this applies to any products or services you have when you do a reboot. Now, you have some ways of understanding what's going on with your community once you already have something out there. But first, I want to share a link. I told you 2 things I want to share with you today. Here's the first thing. What I'm sharing here is a link to the book on Amazon. Now, I know if you're here, you probably already bought the book, and thank you if you have. I want to ask something. I know this is bold, but I have a selfish reason. Would you be willing to buy one more copy right now? By going to that link, you can get an audio copy or a print copy or Kindle. And maybe you can gift it to someone. Oh, Melanie, thank you. Thank you very much. But let me explain why I'm asking. I believe if you haven't got it, it will serve you. I think you can also give it to one of your team members because there's sections in there for them, or you can even give it to another entrepreneur to serve them. So I hope you can gift it and build rapport with that person. But here's the selfish reason I'm asking. Right now, we're just starting launch week 2. This is actually the most important week for a book to get momentum. If you buy a book, what happens is the Amazon engine triggers its algorithm saying, oh, there's surge demand right now. We need to market it more. So if you're willing to get a copy of the book, post it in the chat so I can personally thank you. And if you could do it now, what will happen is it'll trigger the additional sales or awareness, I should say, to other people and sell more. My hope is this book is a authoritative source on helping all entrepreneurs run their businesses more efficiently. And I'm just asking for your help to spread the word. So thank you, everyone, to do it. Julie, Rob, John, Rob, I know Rob well. He always shows up. Tasha, thank you. Josh, thank you. Melanie, John, Heather, you rock. So I'll share the link one more time because sometimes it gets buried.
Also, John Gibson, Debbie. Hi, Debbie. Julie, Tasha. Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. So it helps me tremendously. And if you don't want to do or don't feel compelled, I understand. Our goal here is to serve you. That's just one way I'm asking that. Perhaps you could serve me. So thank you for doing it. If you already have it, get any other version you want. All right, let's dig in, AJ, to the writing and editing process. I have a lot of notes here.
But before you do that, will you just talk about, because I think it's important to understand how did you actually pitch it to Penguin Random House?
Oh, thank you. And some people are asking for the links in India and Canada. If you just type in Clockwork Revised and Expanded on your Amazon account, you'll find it. So go to your amazon.ca or .in, type in Clockwork Revised and Expanded, you'll find it. So pitching it to PRH. So PRH is Penguin Random House. What I need to do is align my biggest vendor for this. So if you have your own book, you've self-published, you don't need them on board. But for me, I'm in a contractual agreement with the first version of Clockwork to keep promoting it and spreading the word on it. I can't go out and self-publish and say, hey, I want to do Revised Expanded, because this would undermine my contract with Penguin. It's not integral, but it's also contractually in conflict. So I have an obligation to reach out to them. And what I did was I reached out to my editor, his name is Noah, and said, I wait to do a Revised and Expanded edition of Clockwork. And he said, why? And of course, they're going to say that. You have to have a compelling argument, a valid argument, not just like, oh, I think it could sell more. I said, here's the 4,000 emails we received over the last year with questions about the book. Here's the common threads we identified. We have a service division, Run Like Clockwork, that's experiencing certain consistent anomalies in regards to how the book is written, and I can fix this. As a result of making these changes, I think it's going to be a better book. And what they want to hear, and I got to try to prove it, is by making a better book, more copies will be in circulation. That's how Penguin makes their income. So I had to make that argument. It isn't like the editor says, okay. What happens at the publishing house is they say, well, we have these other 50 books or 1,000 books we're publishing in this quarter or year. They have a bunch of books. They have to say, this one that we were considering doing, we're not going to do, and Mike's going to be, his book's going to be inserted. So it's a big ask. They're actively negotiating contracts and agreements. They had to say, we're going to take one off the table. Not when they agree to, but when they're considering saying, sorry, you got bumped. And we're going to insert Mike's book. So you have to have a compelling argument. The challenge too is it uses all their resources, or not all their resources, but the resources need to be activated. When I wrote Clockwork, the 2 years leading up to it, the editors involved, proofreaders, copywriter editors, line editors, a sales team, which helps with distribution, marketing teams, all these people, and it's a big resource suck. Then when the book launches, they're still actively involved behind the scenes, but their demand fades over 6 months to a year. Roughly a year later, after a book comes out, Penguin Random House doesn't do anything actively except for push the print button. We have demand, print. So they print and distribute, and they do that over and over and over again. What I'm asking them is, let's reactivate the entire team and let's do this. It's like launching a new book for them in regards to their resource commitment. So it's a big gamble, a big bet, but they said they'll do it. And thank you for everyone, Brenda, Rob, John, Amit, everyone's getting the book. Thank you, Deb, you Debbie Horvitz, you rock. Thank you everyone for supporting me. It does spread the word. I appreciate you. I'll put the link up one more time. Julie, thanks. Mike, got it. Awesome. All right, AJ, let's rock and roll with writing and editing.
Yeah, let's do it. So, I want to just encourage everybody, when you're thinking about doing a reboot, to be inspired by the way we did Profit First and Clockwork. You don't want to just tweak a few things, add an extra chapter, update your, research if you have it. I think it's important to look at it as, how can this book really be of service in a new way? How can I reboot this in a way that helps deliver on the promise of the book even better than I did before? So you have to make a commitment to that. And I think also if you do have a publisher and you're pitching it, you need to let them know that's what you're doing. One of the things that happened is we switched editors in between. We didn't switch. Right. They gave us a new editor in between Profit First and Clockwork reboots. And our new editor didn't anticipate that we were actually we just took it all apart. Like if it was a machine or a Lego set, we just literally dismantled the whole thing and then put it back together. And he didn't think we were going to do it. So it's important to communicate that, because it caused delays, because we didn't know he was going to expect us to do it so fast, and that he was going to have to put as much resources into his own developmental edit as a result. So just communication on that, I think, is good. We started really simply. I went back and read the book again. Mike went back and read the book again. And Adrian Dornson went back and read the book again in our private corners. And we collected notes about what we'd like to change, what we felt really had to stay, anything that had to be clarified. And then we compared notes in a really long meeting where we thought, okay, what is axed forever? What do we need to expand on? What do we need to contract? What's out of order? And one of the big things was, how can we make this fewer steps? So that was first, was you got to go read your book again. Don't think that you actually remember all of it, because I think some of it, I remember that meeting with, oh yeah, remember that part? And so you have to go back and compare notes if there's multiple people involved. So even if you don't have a co-author, you might have somebody who's implementing it, certifying, serving clients. Even if you don't have an official licensee like Adrian Dornson, there might be somebody who's implementing it and helping you get the word out that could read it and give you some feedback. Do you have anything to add on that, Mike?
No. There's a lot of questions that have come in. I'm just collecting them. So when you're
ready, so I'll just keep running through. So your next step, once you've done that, is you create a to-do list. So Mike and I work together. Like, I have stuff to do, he has stuff to do. So, we kind of go to our separate corners and we stay in communication, but we made a list of the things we wanted to change, who was responsible for that. Immediately, we had a bunch of interviews to do. We did a ton of them, as Mike explained. And the thing that's important to understand is that interviews are not just for stories. They actually give you ideas about content. So we try to do the interviews right away. Don't save them for later. Do them right away, because somebody will say something and then Mike and I will have a debrief after, and, oh, wasn't that interesting? And maybe we need to think about a different way to say this. And maybe we need to, so it's not just about collecting a story. It's actually shapes the rest of the content. So schedule those interviews right off the bat. And then we created a new outline. And this was probably for me the hardest part, because I don't know if you remember, we had to dismantle it a couple of times.
Oh yeah.
Does the QBR go here or
Yeah.
here? Does this,
Before
what's
vacation shifted, and ended up being kind of an introduction and then a conclusion.
Yeah, it was a whole it was a whole reconfiguration just to wrap our head around uber simplification. That was the goal, was simplify, 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 and then simplify again. So once we had all that down and we were sure, then it's all about some rewriting, some editing, and some new writing, filling in that outline. And once that step is done, and that's actually the longest step, once that step is done, it's testing the draft with advanced readers to get their feedback. And finally, the last step is going through the entire full editorial process with the publisher again.
I do want to share one little piece that you talked about, AJ, that is a hack that we figured out in the rewrite at Clockwork, is in the interview process. So when you're writing your books and doing an interview, and I would invite you to interview them over Zoom or some kind of video conferencing. There's multiple hacks that came out of this. One is at the end of the interview, I say goodbye to the guest I'm interviewing. And then if AJ is with me, which she's with me for 99% of the interviews, we have a dialogue right then and there, because we get transcribed. So once we have the transcription at the very end, I'm looking for what did we highlight in the moment. That way you're on top of it and you get the juicy stuff extracted, as opposed to going back and say, what was good, what was bad. So say goodbye to your guests, but keep the tape rolling and transcribe it.
I do the same thing, Mike. I go straight to the end, read the last thing that we said to, and then I go back and look at the interview.
It saves so much time. And if you're doing this, you don't have to be doing someone else. If you do it solo, just spit out your thoughts. The second part is I started doing this, AJ. I didn't even ask AJ, I just started doing it with the guests. I would say, hey, we're interviewing you for the book, but we're also recording this. And sometimes my readers like to get behind the scenes. May I have your permission to publish this recording in that format so readers who want more can access it? And I would say about 90% say yes. I'd say some of them say, ooh, there's certain parts you got to leave out. And other ones that say no, but almost everyone says yes. And I asked in the beginning, and at the very end, when we're wrapping up, I say, hey, I just want to make sure I still have your permission. Maybe you said something you don't want shared. They say yes. And now you have content for bonus material.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So we ran through the process. Do you want to answer some questions?
Let's go to the
now?
questions. Yep. I was copying and pasting them and looking over here, so I don't have the people's names, but I do the questions. How do you know if it's the product or the marketing that needs to be fixed? So is it the book or the way the book's being marketed? Do you have an initial thought, AJ? I do.
I mean, I'm sure, but I don't think the reboot reason to do it is if it's not selling well. I think you reboot a book that is selling well.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Think about remastering songs. Hotel California has been remastered. I Love Tom Petty, Learn to Fly has been remastered. A lot of his songs have been remastered, but the B-sides that weren't popular didn't get remastered. When you're going to redo something, you're putting a Herculean effort. So it needs to be selling. If marketing needs to fix, usually that means out of the gate, it's not getting enough momentum. If the book, after you push out the gate, is not, or a product, whatever the product may be, is not selling, that may be an indicator you don't have one that's worth word of mouth. And then you got a product issue.
I get this a lot, actually. People come into my workshop, and then when they realize this system for actually writing a transformational book, oh gosh, I want to go back and fix this other book I wrote. And I always say, don't do that. Just write this book the way it needs to be written. Don't go back and try and rehash. It doesn't mean you can't pull teaching points and concepts from that book. All of Mike's books have it's a symbiotic relationship. It's a full catalog. They're not really silos. They work together. So it's not like you can't ever talk about the same thing in the book you want to redo, but because you don't love the book is not a reason to reboot it, or because it's not really selling that well.
This question says, I read the original book. I just purchased the updated book. Thank you. Are there certain chapters I should read in the new books, and what's different? So let me share what's different. Really is guidance on how you should explain what's different. If I went through every element, it'd be an hour or two. So what I lead with, and I already shared, is 60% of it is brand new content, new case studies, new simplified approaches, new ideas, and some other elements. I'll give you now the bullet points. And this is whenever you do a reboot, give them how much is new. If you ever buy a product and it says this is new packaging, great new packaging, same old formula, that's a way of identifying the change. So in Clockwork, the addition of employees, in every single chapter, there's an employee only section. The QBR has been simplified. That was the core formula for the book, has been simplified, and it can be implemented faster with greater impact. The 3 T's have become the 4 T's, which is a concept called the 4 Ds has now become the 5 Ds. There's also new angles on the 4-week vacation of why employees should be taking 4-week vacations. We've been testing that here for now. We're on our 3rd year of testing, so we were able to include that. And there is a powerful closing story from Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of Hamilton. And it's an amazing tie back. I wish I knew that story before Clockwork was written, but maybe the story hadn't boiled up yet. But this story brings Clockwork together in such a powerful way because he clockworked his life effectively.
And that's an example that, so to just a little add on to that, there's new content in every chapter, and the chapters are reorganized so that the flow works differently in a way that makes more sense based on Adrian's experiences in Run Like Clockwork. But that last piece with Lin-Manuel Miranda, that's the call to greatness.
Yes.
And that we knew when we went in, we said, it's not great. We're tearing it down. It's out. It's just out. And I still remember we didn't have an idea. We didn't have an idea. We know we'll get it eventually, so we don't worry too much about it. But I still remember texting you, Mike, from my my physical therapist's parking lot and saying, I know what it is.
I remember it.
Yeah. I think it's that Lin-Manuel Miranda story about how he got the idea on vacation for Hamilton. Yes. Bingo, bango. But that whole call to greatness is completely brand new.
I'll answer Josh's question because we're running tight on time. Josh says, if your book is not selling well, would you write another book, or for him, a 3rd, or make it into an audiobook? For me, the print book sells about 40% of my sales, audio about 50%, 10% Kindle. So you may double your sales just because you have a format that's not available currently. But if this book is not selling well, are you going to double something that's not good? So if you're selling 1 book a month, now you're going to sell 2 books a month, 3 books a month. Is that the impact you want? Just measure that, and it may be another book. All right, here's the next question. When they update the book, do they typically take down the original versions? You tend to still sell the original. Yeah. So how's that work, AJ, when the new book comes out and the old book is managed by the publisher or self-publisher?
Yeah. I mean, if you're self-published and a publisher picks you up, your self-published book is out. And you lost every review, it was all had to rebuild the whole thing. But it was worth it. If you have a revised and expanded edition, the publisher can keep the original up if they want to keep it up.
But it degrades quickly. And if they do it, meaning the publisher has to institute this, but it's on Amazon's platform as an example, is it'll show the old book, the prior book, and below it'll say a new edition is available and a link across. But you do lose all those reviews. So that's part of the deal. As a PFP, is there anything specific that would be highly important to me? So people that don't know what PFP is, that's a profit first professional, someone certified in the profit first methodology. No, there's nothing specific to profit first in there, but Clockwork is influential on your profitability because it brings about more efficiency. So no, nothing specific, but definitely an improvement for any business owner. I'm considering a book to support my business in a similar way. Is there a better Is it better to go with a publisher specialized in my niche or find one based on their reach and resources? What do you think, AJ?
Say the last part of the question again, just to make sure I understand it.
I'm
Because I
considering,
can't see it.
is it better to go with a publisher specialized in my niche, or should I find one based simply on their reach and resources?
Neither. It's not about that. It's about finding a publisher who has a good editorial team and has trade distribution, and you get along with them okay. Honestly, that's it. It's just get the deal with people who have integrity and where there's trade distribution, and then get the book out.
That's the key. Some
By
people
the way,
in the chat,
thank you. I don't know if I can post in the chat or not, but thank you to those who also picked
yeah.
up the
So
book. I
AJ
really
has a book
appreciate
called
it.
Write a Must Read. It is the formulas, everything on how we work together. I mean, it's not our story, but everything's in there.
But there's a lot of stories, actually. If you're geeking out over how the sausage is made, you'll find a lot of.
That's true. There's a lot of stories, even right in the open. But there's the book. One last thing we wanted to share with you, and this is, I think, really important, is AJ works exclusively with me as a co-writer, and I am blessed to be her only client in that capacity. And I think that's the way it's going to be into perpetuity, something that we have been discussing and serves her. But she does serve other authors. So I'm just curious in the chat, who here is an aspiring author or an author? Just put in the chat if you're an aspiring author or author. I'd love to see that. AJ has a workshop she does. So I don't want to do unfair justice by trying to explain it. So why don't you, oh, great, there's a lot of authors in this room. So just, if you're an author or aspiring author, listen to what she's doing. It may be of service to you. So why don't you share what it is, AJ?
Sure. I actually see a couple of my alums from my workshop here. I have a workshop I teach twice a year. I only accept 30 new students a year, 15 twice a year. It's called Top 3 Book Workshop, and it is an intensive process to teach the exact way that Mike and I write the books, which I developed as a ghostwriter for many, many years, and figured out how to transfer those skills of how to write a book that truly delivers on a promise. It's a really specific process that Mike and I use, but that I also teach and I use for a lot of other books as a ghost. And it's called Top 3 Book Workshop. It's very hands-on, which is why I only accept 15 people at a time. And it's really more of an entrance into an author identity and community. So it's education, but it's an ongoing process long after the 14 weeks. It's a big investment of time and money, and it really pays off because my students, I'm proud to say, write critically acclaimed, really successful books that are game changers, not better business cards. So if anybody's interested, I actually, coincidentally, this is a total coincidence, we start Monday and I happen to have a couple slots. So if anybody really wants to get in before we have, because it's the last one of the year, hit me up.
Nice job. There's so many authors in here. It's cool. So what I did is I shared the link to a workshop. I invite everyone just to click on the link so you have it and put in your bookmarks if you're not ready for Monday. But maybe it's serendipity for a person or two in this room.
Next year.
Yeah, I invite you to do it. I've attended AJ's workshops. I've attended the sprint components. They're game changing. I can assure you that. All right, we got to wrap things up. A few more questions came in. I'm sorry we didn't get to them all. We have recorded this, and we'll send out the recording. Hopefully, you're able to take copious notes. We just want to honor and respect your time. We've about 2 minutes to wrap here. So, my final thoughts are this: thank you for supporting me and AJ. Thank you for buying Clockwork, Revise, and Expand just now. That's amazing. If you're watching the recording, you can email me, mike@mikemichalowicz.com. If you decide to get the book, it'll still support me, and I can send you a thank you note back. And get out there and start writing yourself. AJ, any final words you want to share?
No, I mean, just get, if you think you want to do a reboot, just get started. That's, but please do the reboot that is of service, not because you just want another chance at marketing it. Really put your heart into it and do another excellent product.
All right. So AJ's workshop is starting Monday. If you want to wait, you gotta wait till 2023. All right. Thanks for joining us today. I hope we served you. Be well, continue success. Authors rule. Bye, all.